Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission today is, well, it's a bit like linguistic archaeology, but for the Sunshine State.
That's a good way to put it.
We're diving deep into the cultural history of Florida's elite indoor flower. And we're focusing entirely on one specific term that, for about 2 decades, defined quality.
Cricky, or sometimes you'll see it spelled Crippy.
Exactly.
And for you, we've synthesized a whole stack of sources that really detail how a single strain name, a very specific one, it just ballooned into this generic identifier for all top-shelf cannabis.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and it effectively charted every major stage, both economic and cultural, of Florida's cannabis evolution, really from the mid-'80s on.
And here's the hook, the really interesting part. If you were in Florida, before the whole world started using terms like dank or chronic or even zaza today,
Right.
your local gold standard, it was all rooted in one specific strain called Kryptonite.
And that's where this whole thing begins.
Okay, let's unpack that origin story. Section 1. We have to start back in 1985 with the Central Florida Surf Crew era. The original product, Kryptonite, it just became the first gold standard. And the sources, they're very specific about what made it so revolutionary for its time.
Well, it was revolutionary because of two things, really. Scarcity and quality. The defining characteristics were, they were instant status markers.
What were they?
Bright, lime green, and incredibly dense. But the single most crucial differentiator, the thing that really changed the game, was that it was genuinely seedless indoor flower.
I think we need to pause on that for just a second. For a modern listener, why was seedless indoor such a massive deal?
Right. I mean, in the mid-'80s, if you were buying black market, you were probably getting, compressed brickweed, unreliable stuff.
Full of seeds and stems.
Riddled with them, yeah. Probably shipped from Mexico.
Yeah.
So when Kryptonite shows up on the scene, grown indoors, perfectly cured, no seeds, it just screamed premium.
So it wasn't just a little better.
Oh, not at all. It was a completely different class of product.
Yeah.
And that quality, that's what allowed the name Kryptonite to be almost instantly shortened by locals to Crippy.
That shortening of the name, it seems so natural. But the sources show that Crippy immediately became the shorthand for all good weed.
Precisely. The strain itself was so foundational, so exclusive, that the nickname Crippy became the code for all high-quality, seedless flower in Florida.
So it stopped being about the actual Kryptonite genetics.
Almost immediately, it just became the generic term for what our sources call kind, dank, and top-shelf headies, which just means the best, strongest stuff you could possibly get.
And what really gives the term its cultural weight is the story behind the name, which started right there on the coast.
It's a classic piece of regional folklore, really. The foundational story dates back to 1985 at Sebastian Inlet.
Right.
And the legend goes that a surfer, after lighting up a joint of this new, really potent stuff in a van, he joked that it was so strong it could drop Superman.
And it stuck.
The joke stuck, and the strain was christened Kryptonite. That one single casual comment basically defined a regional culture for decades.
However, this is a deep dive, so we have to look at all the angles. And there is an alternative origin story that challenges that Sebastian Inlet narrative.
The Kauai theory, yeah, we absolutely have to acknowledge the competing claim.
What does it say?
Some of the material suggests Crippy actually began a year later, in 1986, on Kauai, in Hawaii. This version says it came from a massive 500-seed search, what growers call a pheno hunt.
A search for the perfect plant.
Exactly, the perfect phenotype. And supposedly, it was named after Crip, which was their slang for top-shelf quality. The theory goes that surfers then brought that original plant, that cut, to Florida.
That raises a question for me, though. If it was a Hawaiian term, why did it take over Florida so completely, but, seemingly nowhere else in the continental U.S.?
That's the thing.
The local joke just feels like a much stronger cultural anchor, doesn't it?
It does. I think it does, because that Florida joke provided the cultural hook. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, Yeah. Maybe the genetics came from Hawaii, but the memorable name, Kryptonite, and the slang that came from it, Crippy, that was definitively solidified by that Sebastian Inlet moment. That local story is what gave it staying power.
So local or imported, the first wave established Crippy as the benchmark. But the real cultural cement, that arrived in, the early to mid-'90s?
Yes, Section 2. This is where a second high-impact wave comes in. This wave standardized the term and just exploded the economics around it.
The second wave was critical then.
Absolutely critical. So years after the original surf crew had kind of moved on, a new massive batch hits the market. It was super consistent, ultra-dense, tightly sealed.
Sounds professional.
It was. Our sources indicate it was likely a high-grade import.
Yeah.
And crucially, it reused that now-famous name, Krippy. This is the batch that bridged the gap to the next generation.
Let's focus on the economic impact. This is where Crippy stops being just niche slang and starts driving the whole market. What are we talking about price-wise?
It was, devastatingly expensive. And that's proof of its status.
Compared to the alternative.
Well, low-grade brickweed might go for $50, maybe $100 an ounce. This imported Crippy was commanding $500 to $800 an ounce.
Wow.
This wasn't just a high price, it was a luxury item. And if you wanted to buy a whole pound, you were looking at north of $5,600. If you could even find it.
That price point isn't just about quality. It's about scarcity. And in an illicit market, consistency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In a market where you never knew what you were going to get, paying that massive premium for something that was guaranteed to be good, seedless, and consistent, it was worth it for those who could afford it.
And that consistency is what led to the final linguistic shift, right? Around the late 90s.
That's right. By 96, 97, the shift was complete. Thanks to that standardized, expensive imported wave, Crippy stopped meaning a specific strain.
It just meant good.
It became the absolute shorthand for any top-shelf, seedless, indoor product, no matter what its actual genetics were. If it was clean, sticky, and strong, it was Crippy. The term meant you were getting the best.
And this focus on quality, on paying a premium, it didn't just create slang, it fundamentally changed Florida's entire cultivation infrastructure.
This might be the biggest takeaway. The success of Crippy, it gave them the proof of concept and the cash to build out Florida's indoor grow scene.
How?
That high price tag justified the immense risk and the cost, especially the electricity. Those early seedless runs, they turned what the sources call those massive power bills into paydays.
I like that.
It showed local growers that quality could justify a high price, so they started investing in high-tech indoor operations. It proved that local craft could meet or even beat the imported stuff.
So the slang didn't just describe the scene, it funded it.
It literally funded it.
Which moves us perfectly into Section 3, where this generic term circles back and starts to create these new localized identities.
And this part is fascinating. You see how the generic name gets co-opted to create a very specific regional identity? As the slang spread, local growers started borrowing the label to give their own products instant credibility.
Instant cachet.
Exactly. So you see the emergence of a specific Miami Crippy cut and a Tampa Crippy cut.
And when you say a cut, just for the listener who might not know the jargon, what are we talking about?
A cut is a clone. It just means a specific, successful plant, a phenotype, was chosen and then propagated, vegetatively. It lets growers keep reproducing that exact same quality over and over.
So a Miami Crippy cut meant a local grower found something special.
Right. They found a unique, superior local plant that they felt was worthy of carrying that legendary name. It was both a specific product and a kind of regional stamp of approval.
So the name becomes this cultural shortcut. It signals generic quality and local street cred at the same time. Does any of that legacy still exist today?
Absolutely. The sources say there's a later Tampa Crippy cut that still floats around, and it's often described as OG leaning.
And OG leaning means?
For the listener, it means it shares those heavy, classic characteristics of the original West Coast OG Kush strains. That distinct aroma, the potent effects, the fact that a local Florida clone, decades later, still carries that name. It's just a testament to the original's lasting footprint.
And that footprint, that linguistic reach, it went far beyond the U.S.
Oh, yeah. If you connect this to the bigger picture of how culture spreads, the name's journey is incredible. It didn't stop in Florida.
Where'd you go?
In South Florida, the huge Cuban and Latin communities, they adopted it and expanded it to El Creepy.
El Creepy.
Yeah, using it to describe any high-grade flower. And that term, it has since migrated all over. It's now a common term for top-shelf cannabis across South and Central America.
From a joke in a van at Sebastian Inlet all the way to South America. And it kept its meaning of exclusivity and quality the entire time.
It did. The term Crippy ultimately became associated not just with a product, but with status. It was the word you used when you wanted to signal to everyone, growers, buyers, that you understood the history, that you knew what the real elite standard was.
That status connection leads perfectly into Section 4, pop culture. The sources give us some really concrete examples of how music just cemented the term in history.
Yeah, and when a term shows up over and over in popular music, you know it's hit the mainstream. Florida artists especially, they just embedded it into the lexicon.
Like who?
Well, think about Trick Daddy. He mentioned Crippy green way back in 1998. That's a very early, very loud confirmation that the term was already everywhere.
Then almost a decade later, you have Pitbull keeping that regional flame alive. He mentions Miami Krippy in 2007.
Exactly. And it wasn't even just Florida artists. You had Juicy J from a totally different region paying homage with his track Kryptonite, making sure the original name was remembered too. These weren't some, deep cuts. They were tapping into a known, valuable cultural touchstone.
So if we tie this whole journey together, the name, from Kryptonite to Crippy to El Creepy, it did so much more than just name a product.
It was the constant language for elite flower. Culturally, it was the original seed of everything that followed in that region. It marked every single stage of Florida's cannabis evolution.
From the surf era.
To the professional indoor market of the 90s, all the way through to its immortalization in hip-hop. It set the standard that everyone else had to meet for 2 full decades.
That is just an incredible journey for a piece of slang. We've gone from a single strain based on a joke in a van in 1985, through the brutal economics of $800 ounces to a regional marker of undeniable quality that fueled an entire market and became a cultural symbol across the Caribbean. Crippy wasn't just slang. It was Florida's gold standard.
And that whole history, that success, it raises a final important question for you, the listener, to think about as we wrap this up.
What's that?
In today's market, which is highly fragmented, super commercialized, legal in many places, where new brands and strains pop up every single day.
Yeah.
Is it even still possible?
Possible for what?
For a single, non-commercialized strain name to achieve that kind of universal, grassroots cultural dominance that Crippy held across an entire region for so long. I mean, the market is almost structured against it now. But does that kind of cultural cohesion still exist?
That is some food for thought. A perfect place to end this deep dive. Thank you for joining us as we explored the cultural history of quality.
My pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next one.